Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. This is your host, Llorraine Neithardt, and this is Venus Unplugged. And what we're exploring for the next couple of months is the alchemy of love. And we are looking at its mystery. What is so absolutely and totally mysterious about this energy, this field called love? Now, alchemy, for those that are not familiar with that term, the basis of alchemy, in, of course, medieval times, it was believed that the alchemist could turn lead into gold. Now, in the Jungian term, turning lead into gold, lead, which is also ruled by Saturn, lead within us is that unbidden suffering, or that the heaviness, the depression, the burden, it just keeps us down. It doesn't seem to have a form. Very often, like, we can give a reason to our depression or our sorrows, but in truth, it just is this heaviness. And the alchemical process, which is taking the lead or the shit, the manure, the shadow, the parts we don't know, and begin to work with them. We don't demand that it changes. And that's one of the great mysteries of loving, is we have a tendency to, well, in personal relationships, to meet somebody and they're perfect, and then it's now change. And we do that. It's they're perfect, except, they do this or they do that. Well, that thing that they do that drives you cuckoo, that mystery, or the mystery of how did I fall in love with this person, that's where the rub is. That's where the imagination is. Image making. Psyche is an image-making process, which is why we create, which is why we do art, literature, and poetry. It's what do we do with all of these possibilities that live inside of us? And to begin to understand that this is all the making of loving. So in the alchemy of love, it's also self-love. And one of the most important things of that self-love is to be able to accept. First comes the acceptance. The change is not going to come before there's acceptance. Because in the acceptance, maybe a habit that we have that just is annoying. It would be something where, one is living in bad faith with time and they're always late. And then the stories they start telling themselves around why they have to be late. The elephant ate their homework, or whatever it is that they're telling. And in order to keep this relationship unknown, why they're always late. Now, some people will tolerate it, and other people won't, and then some people are obnoxiously on time, clicking their fingers, like, where are you, where are you? I think a lot of this continual phoning, which is pretty bizarre. You walk on the streets of New York City, where I live, and nobody's looking at anything. They're all looking at this object in their hands. It's amazing how they can walk and text. That's even more amazing, let alone do it dangerously while they're driving. So, and looking at, how we're communicating, I think, how are people going to fall in love if you don't look in their eyes? Really begin to notice people noticing. You're alive, you're there. But if everybody's with these messages. And a lot of the messages is that I'll be there, I won't be there, I'm late, I'm this, I'm that, and a bit of a hysteria about being in the moment or being in the imagination or Googling everything rather than struggling for the meaning. Because the soul is a meaning-making process. So in the realm of the imagination, see, that's where the gold comes in. And the gold is consciousness. The gold is what we begin to realize what we're longing for. The gold is the love. It's also the gold is also the golden Aphrodite, who is the archetype of love. The gold is the awareness. So when we are in the process of soul making, which in a sense is a love affair with yourself and with your soul and with your deeper meaning, it's a lifetime's work. And in fact, there is no goal. There is no end. We're here in life and in death. And this is all part of what we are. This is part of the loving. And we constantly are struggling in this mystery of love, asking the questions of, why does he do that? Or why did that happen? Or unconsciously setting up a dynamic that you have no idea you've orchestrated and just can't accept that. So it's not about blame, because that's a big waste of time. Certainly, responsibility is one of the greatest powers we can have, because that will, the responsibility, not over-responsibility, not the responsibility that it's your fault, but the responsibility of okay, this is where my fate landed me, this is where I am today, this is the moment, and not wasting it bemoaning why me, but going wow, okay, let me use my imagination, let me image. Imagination is the word magus in it. Magus is the magician. And the magician looks at things in different ways and feels their way through in different ways. And that's part of what the mystery of loving is. Those we love are actually completely and utterly different every day. But we kind of, put an image or a branding on them, and that's who they are, and we don't see those other parts. Or we can say, they're so charming and marvelous in public, but with me they're just cats, terrible, terrible cats. Instead of going what other people see that you don't see? Or what is it that sometimes it's something we want to disown, so we see it in the beloved. And because the other loves, we know, okay, they're working something out. And I'm part of what they're working out. So we don't necessarily have to leave. And certainly, loving is truly, 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 it's such a hard path. It's so difficult, but it's also so glorious. It's the thing that, makes art and people and what this is all about. It's an earned right. It's a capacity that we have. And unfortunately, in our fantasies, we believe we have that absolute right, or that person should love us because, and we have all these rhymes and reasons. Now, there are times, certainly in loving, where your love is different because, let's say you're thinking of having children or you want to get married. So very often you pick a different person than the wild lover that, you can have complete abandon with. That's not particularly who you want, to father your child. very different. There's so many different kinds of love. And, of course, the unconscious psyche, even though we think we're the ones picking it, is the one choosing. And that's the great mystery. What is it really up to? Why that person and not the other? What is it in our soul? And this, it's like when we're making inspired mistakes, it always moves us forward. You know, what fantasy activated that action? What was I imagining? And we get caught up in the why instead of like, wow, well, this just brought me forward, or this just made me go into therapy or take an art class or write in my journal, because without this friction, without this mistake, without this unknowing, mistake does not mean it's the wrong thing. It may be the wrong approach. You may be approaching a gift, because what motivates all art is love. And all creativity is love. It's a longing. It's through the imagination, taking something that doesn't exist, something that's in the invisible realm, and then bringing it into the world, translating it and bringing it into the world, very much like the magician does. And imagination kind of dwells between the worlds, and it opens us up to secret areas and regions that the mind and the soul never brings us towards until we use that innate faculty, imagination. So when your imagination is awakened, your experience deepens in the most unexpected ways. Very often in love relationships or unions, and that's also between friends and lovers and children and, well, not so much animals. Somehow animals don't disappoint. And I don't know if it's because, for those people that love animals, for people that are afraid of animals or doesn't like animals, that they're just one big scary aspect, these little four-leggeds. But somehow, what is that? What do they activate in us? What is this instinctual remembrance? It's also because animals are very physical. You know, it's the sensate. It's in the body, the play and the joy and the delight. I think just the way animals welcome you is, I like to see people welcome one another more, like kind of sniff around and look and see, and you want to play or growl or whatever it is that's really going on. It's pretty clear what is happening. So in this mystery that we call love, and it's also a mystery because it's just below the threshold. It's always present, and I see it happen all the time. People are like, no, I'm never going to find love. It's like, okay, so don't find it, be it. If we're trying to find it, we're missing the point. Be the love that you want. At least you'll be halfway there, and you won't be as disappointed. Because the being no love is a shadow and light. The being no love is an act of imagination. It's a capacity to delight in others, in ourselves, and how ridiculous we are at times, and how unbelievably magical we can be. You know, you get those days and you think, oh man, this world blows. It's so scary. Why are they doing that? What's going on? Why would they hurt one another so? And then some story comes across in a book or Facebook or a story that you told about the human heart and the courage, and oh gosh, there it is. That's what humanity is. Because we can also learn to love humanity. I mean, certainly love their souls, because they are struggling, no matter how the external may seem. And that's a form of loving, too. That's another mystery. And so there's a sacred duty to live in an honorable way with yourself. Not what you think another should do. Shoulda, woulda, and coulda. Those are three things that always will get you in trouble. Because in the invisible world, which is the realm of imagination, lives spirits and images and colors. You know, we see thousands of more colors that we know about, but because the language is limited and we don't have a name for it, we'll see it, well, it's kind of like in a blue family, or it's like that, or we'll make up some names, like those marvelous names for lipsticks. Those always get me. I think they're fantastic. And that, too, it's a secret love, is what the imagination holds. And it could be a love of morbid, or the love of what is not classically considered beautiful. It's being able to understand that the imagination and the longing is to evoke beauty, or the fear of beauty. And believe me, people are afraid of beauty. They're afraid of Venus because we can't control it. I don't know what's going to happen. So the anticipatory anxiety around loving another, instead of going like, wow, actually this is kind of terrifying and exciting, kind of being on a roller coaster of emotions and feelings and possibilities and acceptance and otherness. And, that's always the great mystery. Who is this other? And the profound dynamic when one realizes, actually, I will really never know that person completely. I'll know a section, or I'll only allow myself to perceive a part of that person's life, or I'll only perceive the part of that person's life that applies to oneself. That's what and yet the secret lives, and by the secret lives doesn't mean they have a double personality. Secret lives is their wants and their desires and their dreams, and very often that the love, when we talk about purpose, what is my purpose? Well, that's the realm of the imagination, and the purpose, in the way, or it's not just what we're going to do in life, it's the way that we're going to do it. So if there's something that we love deeply, that is the purpose. If one loves flowers, then that's pretty much the area code, right? So that all the opportunities that can come through working with flowers and growing flowers and arranging flowers and drawing flowers and giving flowers and the language of flowers and the poetry, that's the area code that we can find the love and the imagination, because the truth to yourself, it's a life journey, and it's commitment. It's absolute commitment. And in the commitment, it's a marriage, because there is an eternity within, and there is this eternal, this passion, being on fire, right? This blueprint that is latent in our minds and soul. And, we're always emerging. We're never kind of finished, unless we're part of the Walking Dead. Then we're finished in more than one ways, because we're not blowing any libido. Libido is the life-giving force, the breath that animates, and that is the imagination. So, life and love, death, it offers us a mirror, and in that mirror we form an image, and then that goes into the eternal world. So life-making, myth-making, creative imaginations. And imagination is so often kinder than the mind, because it works naturally. It's like between the worlds. It works with the unknown world and the invisible territory. It's like, who knew? Or if you allow yourself to, there's this great little, it's called the Buddha board, and it's this little board, and you get a brush, and, you put the brush in water, and then you draw something, scribble or doodle or whatever on the board, and then about, within 5 minutes it dissolves. And it's a wonderful practice in letting go. Now, if you fall in love with the image, have your camera near and take a picture of it, and you certainly can do that. But just that experience, anything that we do, and I find that the more simple it is, actually, the more complex, which is the paradox, is your experience. When something just dissolves, you just made it. It's just there. It's kind of like sand, making the sand mandalas, and then the wind comes and blows everything away, which is that experience of putting your imagination to work and your skill to work, and then letting it go. It's a wonderful way to teach children. There it is. No, it's not. That's why children love peekaboo. There it is. There it's not. They know. And part of the mystery of loving and of imagination is we dream of what could be. And that's filled with richness. Now, of course, when we hang our hat on the wrong situation of, this person could be that and could be that, do not fall in love with the future person of what they could be. It's who they are now in the moment. And one has to be, life is going to change us. But if we just roll around and life, whatever life is, and whatever our interpretation of that experience is, it's not what they could be. It's who they are now. That potential is there, but work with your own potential. It's not that's not the job. Love itself will transform. If you can hold that container, you could hold that mystery. Like I said, if there's something about a person and you say, oh, Lordy, that attitude is going to get them in trouble. And they can't see it. They absolutely cannot see it. But life is going to help them see it. And if they're really unfortunate, they'll get everything they want and therefore never learn, which is really a big tragedy. Or they'll keep this limited perspective rather than the mystery and the tension and the imagination of not knowing. Truly not knowing. Wow, I have no idea. But waiting and observing. My father was a birdie. A birdie in the Bronx, they flew pigeons on the roof. So we always had 250 pigeons at least. And of course, I didn't know I had this whole language. I was raised with pigeons, and it was kind of like what they're about, their mating season. My father was always observing them and taking care of them. It's kind of a poor man's falconry. And then they fly them, and then there's birds steal other birds. It's a whole kind of nights in the sky, and all these laws, they're like street laws. But I didn't know I was being given a great gift, because I would have to observe. And then my father would ask me, well, what do you see about this bird? He didn't realize I had a gift of clairvoyancy. Certainly, I thought everybody did. So that was no big thing. And I would observe, and then I would say what I saw, and maybe I would see, something in the look, or actually I was just seeing their aura about the bird. And I could tell. They have these little bands on them with different numbers, but each bird is absolutely, all 250 of them are completely and utterly different. But it was through the observation. So I was taught, in order to have a relationship with these birds, and also to share in something that my father adored. It was his kind of meditation, these extraordinary beings, And, pigeons are an extension of the dove, which, of course, is Venus's bird. So there was so much I learned because at an early age, I was asked to just step back and observe and just notice. It wasn't a test. It wasn't any criticism. It was there. I was looking at it, how it just moved. So the power of being still, it's not no thought, but it's like being still and observing. Not so much the brightness of the mind, but the imagination, the image making. What could this be? So we can create a desert around us. See, children live in the world of possibilities, which is the world of imagination. And the imagination it's an aliveness. It is always there. Now, some people are dull to their imagination. They feel it's foolish, or it's not factual. Well, factual is wonderful, but once you've got the fact, that's it. That's the end of the story. There's no more story. In order to carry forward, one has to use the imagination. And it's also, we can dream of what would be. So, in artists, it's a mystical. They live in this world of imagination. And so those who love, or are discovering love, or becoming love, it's not about what you're going to get. It's what does this love and this love object, or the no object, sometimes there's no love around, and we need to experience that. Not having all this excitement, but this wonder of creation, that, everything is alive, and there's a divine breath, and that's holding everything together, and that you're in the creative depths of you. There is another when you fall in love, because you see that other in you, in that person. And that's part of the longing. And so start to keep a journal, just about a notebook. And let it just be a mirror of your thoughts. And then every couple of months, just read from it. It's a beautiful exercise to do. So that kept Wow. Okay, we've got 10 seconds left. All right, so we'll get a notebook that's just for your thoughts or your imagination, and it's written for the divine. Nobody else is to read it or interpret it. You don't analyze it. You don't interfere with it. You leave it alone. You let it build up. And then on certain days, whatever you pick as your holy day, right? You read it to the divine, and within you and without. So work with imagination, and you'll find the beat and heat of the rhythm of life. Because fear is like a misuse of imagination. And imagination can be very kind and very healing. So that's what we're working with. We're going to continue to work with this mystery, and then we're going to move into the sorrows of love, and then we're going to move into the wisdom of love. So these are just some thoughts to have you use your imagination. And imagination keeps the heart young. So, here's to the imagination, your image-making capacity to make beauty and to transform lead into gold. Bye-bye.
Progressive presents Mindfulness with Flow.
Before you lies a beautiful meadow. In that meadow, Progressive Direct has placed its auto insurance rates alongside those of competitors. You select the lowest rate and feel a great sense of calm. A great sense of...
Compare Progressive Direct rates with competitors' rates so you can rest easy. Visit Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Vary based on how you buy. Vary based on how you buy. Vary based on how you buy.